let them all hook up. And one to go, YouTube. Okay, we're good. All right. Welcome everybody to the live and replay. We got the beautiful beloved Ashley Lee's in the house. And she just got back from Hawaii. And yeah, we've mixed our energies many, many times, and we're about to do it again, see what comes out. But I'm going to allow people some time to come to get into the studio. This is our third and I believe final show today, unless I do a remix tonight. But yeah, we'll be back in a minute and 19 seconds. What's happening, everybody? We got 31 people in the house and counting. Our notifications are not going out, so if these shows resonate with you, please share to your page or to a group. You can also watch these shows on soulgnetwork.com, and we got more coming each and every week for that. Thank you for your continued love and support and contributions. Allow us to keep doing this by the seat of our pants every day, but that's the 5D way, isn't it? You got to live in the moment and be present and work with the spontaneous, intuitive, creative, imaginative, and courageous energy that we all are. I am Soul. Good to see you, Ashley Lee.
Good to see you. I am Soul too, and it is so exciting to be a part of the Soul family that we are. Oh my gosh.
So many creative birthings going on everywhere I turn. You know, we saw that happening in Sedona with Vibrational and with Awake TV, and so many other ones, you know, like people doing shows, people getting on and doing videos and lives, people coming out with new artistic inspirations that they've never, I've heard several people say this in the last month. It's like, I never painted. I never did this. I never had a creative bone in my body. And all of a sudden I'm being told, go do this, go do this. And of course, that's what got us into this mess, listening to our higher self.
Yes. And, seeing so much light language and singing and ways in which we share our frequencies, right? Our giftedness with each other is so remarkable. The unfolding and the happiness and the joy people are experiencing when they do have that opportunity to express their giftedness.
Yeah.
I enjoy your giftedness so much. So you so do live in the flow every minute of every day. And it is remarkable because as we do that, we live in the flow, right? We're an inspiration for each other.
Yeah.
Right. And in that inspiration, right, we learn to speak differently. We learn to connect differently. We learn to touch differently. We learn to even create and, make our world very different when we express that giftedness and then finding it and then recognizing that it grows every day and new ones pop in.
Well, I mean, you can feed the monster of, what do you want to call it? The cartoon, the illusion, the program, or you can feed what is that? What's the opposite of monster? I mean, you can feed the phoenix, you can feed the dragon energy of collaboration and co-creation. And you're right, it's very contagious. And
right. Like I love the ocean of love. I spent the last almost 2 weeks on the ocean on the east side of Oahu and on Honolulu, and and it was amazing. The water was so beautiful, so warm, so inviting. And I recognized, because I love it so much, it's my favorite place to be in the world. And in that opportunity, I recognized this year, this moment, I would release missing out consciousness. That I don't have to miss out in it, that I can remember it, be with it, and be in it every moment of every day, even if I'm not physically there in that moment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that rejoicing in that it goes beyond a memory, right? I mean, our cells vibrate in that moment. We are in the ocean, or we are in that space that we choose to be and choose to really resemble in our hearts what that is.
Yeah. I think the ocean is a perfect metaphor. It really is, because you touch one drop and you're touching them all, you know. That's kind of how the energy I see it works. And so when you look at collaboration, co-creation, and you look at creating, even from an individual standpoint, which is kind of an oxymoron, right? But the the field of measurement is different now because of that. You know, using that analogy again, you know, like you touch a drop in the ocean, you're touching it all. So anything that we do is immediately infused into this expanding new grid that we're creating together, all of us. That information is there, whether it's conscious or unconscious, to say somebody on the other side of the world dipping their toe into the ocean. But you can't really put your finger on it. I mean, we have, like in our world, you know, you have a TV program, and you know, you can look at likes, you can look at minutes, you can look at engagements and comments, and but really it's way beyond that. And I've seen that now becoming more apparent as this year's gone on, you know. And of course I'm looking at it in the micro with Soulgy, but every single day I'm getting both, you know, intel, which has actually been going on for a long time, in regard to how much awareness is there of what you're doing. And then now there seems to be a lot of physical evidence, especially since we launched the website, the initial website, and there's so many people writing and coming to the table, and, like, you know, they're all over the place. I mean, Israel this morning, Russia yesterday, just all these different people, and they're like, "Oh, we've been watching you for 2 years." I'm like, "What?" You know, like, I never seen your name before, right? But my point is, it's not about Soulgy; it's about what we're doing, and not to underestimate the work that we do and the expressions that we share. And I think a really good example is something that you do. And I wanted to ask you about that today on a couple of different aspects of it. And that is the work that you do in the etheric field, like a lot of people do and have done, particularly women, for many, many, many years, with nobody, with no need and really no desire to be noticed. But the fact is, it's being done. And it's not talked about enough, in my opinion. It's not talked about even in the alternate platforms, the alternate news platforms, even in light worker circles. You do see it some, but it's not talked about enough. It to me should be at least having as much airtime as disclosure topics, conspiracy topics, and other light worker type of topics that might involve modalities and such. So in your case, you go into the ethers and you work on specific things as you're guided to. And I'd like for you maybe to share this with us and give us some examples, but also, second part to that, I know you collaborate and co-create, because I've done it with you in the physical with other mirrors of yourself. Do you also do that in the ethers? So it's kind of the second part of the question. What does that look like when you go into the field and you do your work? How do you get the information of what to do, and how do you actually initiate it?
Well, you asked gorgeous amounts of questions that I think made a big mountain, which was awesome. So I'd love to tease it apart a little, because I think they're all very valuable questions. And
Mm,
you know, the first thing I'd like to start with was as how you and I connect, and then
mm,
how we connect with our audience, both live and pre-recorded. in all dimensions of awareness, quite honestly. And in that, I was thinking about, okay, what would I like to presence? Because I'm such a wild person. I have focus everywhere. And so to unifocus or to focus in on a conversation, like where would my heart like to be? There's so many choices, right? And in those choices, it doesn't have to be overwhelming, and it can be very wonderful, and in the opportunity to be masterful with another person, so that the focuses do come together. They're congruent, they're confluent, they reach consensus. Because when we reach consensus, I completely recognize that we're able to move energy when we do it together. And so I was, as you were speaking and formulating that very in-depth question or series of questions, is it connected to me this morning when I woke up, and I create a daily habit of meditating every morning, and I really delve deep into that practice, and committed to making considerable sections of time to that process. It also helps to have a beautiful husband who respects my space and my time and our work in our house, and also a beautiful daughter who's an adult now who doesn't need as much time and attention so early in the morning. But besides those attributes that we've all created inside of our families, I committed that time. And in the morning, this morning, I asked, what would I like to focus on that's so much fun and so much of an opportunity to share with Todd and everyone in the world today? And it really was the children coming through. And I have to say, you have had many interviews that I've been called to watch, and other people have interviews around the children and what to do. And I get a lot of idea, and I don't believe in any of this as protection energy, but I can tell you that there's a lot of me, higher parts of me, that says, don't talk about the kids, don't expose the kids, don't share the kids their giftedness, because of all the disclosures and agendas going on this planet. And so instead of spending so much time protecting the kids and working with the kids and separating them from negative agendas on our planet, what I wanted to do was really presence their brilliance and presence their giftedness. And I don't have to identify who they are
Right.
at the time. They can identify themselves. And as they identify themselves, and it's just literally coming through right this minute, which is so gorgeous, is as they identify themselves and they know the truth of who they are and they know their giftedness, they don't have to protect themselves anymore, because they already stand at that higher frequency that is impenetrable
Yeah.
to lower frequencies of sequestration, control, obedience, suppression, all the rest of them, and the myriads of ways in which we've unfolded those behavior patterns, thought patterns, and energetic patterns we've created on the planet.
Wow. I
I
love
know
this.
I said a mouthful.
I love the streaming. I think about the program sometimes and how basically we all I don't know what the word is. We all download. We all channel. We all can reach that instinctive, natural. Don't even think about it. Point where we're just basically the conduit, of our higher self or higher aspects, where it's just coming out so pure, and so then it opens up something in the other person, then you just start going. So what you just said to me, this is what I got, as I was thinking about different shows that I've had, and even in the last week or two, where this subject's come up one way or the other. Mary Rodwell, Stephen Popiotek, and that is, we spend so much time, and it's been a tricky kind of thing, and we're making this up as we go, which is in the highest reverence, because it is a free will in the moment type of new template construction. But what I'm getting at is, one of the things, the children have been a very prominent point in 2020 in terms of attention and focus as to what the threats are and so on. But my point is this, in what you just said, we spend a lot of time having to deal with the illusion of separation in things that are very drastic and different from what we consider in and of ourselves. And this is such a perfect example, because we don't have to name the subjects. We know that about the threats that are coming into more awareness on a global scale in all different circles of life in regard to the children. But if we look at it from an energetic standpoint, we know that it's not real. We know this and we know that, but it still doesn't feel good. Now you bring up the other side of the spectrum, which is what these kids are at, which we're not seeing in these children, and the power that is impenetrable, and that this is what we can focus on. This is what we can encourage. But what the point that I got most from what you just said, and I want to take it back to you, is that we don't realize, people say, I want to fight trafficking. I want to fight any kind of abuse towards kids and this and that and this and that, these big ugly issues. But what we don't realize is that even in our day-to-day life, we can affect change to an incredible degree by our one-on-one interactions with children, which is right to the heart of what you said. The encouragement, uh, the removal of the prohibitions that we've laid upon them, the stifling of their soul and their frequency. But in other words, just to allow it and to encourage it, because that force alone will penetrate through the ocean of the grid and will start to neutralize and negate these big ugly issues that are out there. We can actually do this from where we stand in ways that we couldn't see before because we are in a quantum field.
Well, and I think you're exactly right. And you bring up a really, really specific point, which is fantastic, is that, there's old spiritual doctrine. There's a belief out there that if we shine our light, the dark will come even more to get us. And I have recognized, as I've been illuminating my light year by year, day by day, breath by breath, every day, that I recognize that the light doesn't, the dark is fear. Just literally, it's fear. It's fear and separation. Even the darkest entities have those, and they have light within them. And it could sound like a Star Wars movie, but it's really not.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, the truth is, we all have light in us. We just feel separated from time to time and indoctrinate fear into our lives. And through that fear, we manifest, I call it, with less judgment, unfavorable behavior, unfavorable emotions, unfavorable belief patterns, or actionable patterns that we take on that are less loving, less benevolent, those sort of things. So instead of judging it in all of that process, is the more light that we carry, the more light that we shine, the more giftedness. And what is that giftedness? Telepathy. Well, yay for telepathy, because when the phone systems go down, we're still going to be able to talk to each other. They're talking about manufacturing vaccines and all these kinds of regulations, even to travel. Well, all right, so let's just get real. It's time for humanity to grow up and start doing teleportation.
Yeah.
Right? And when we do teleportation, we won't need to consume or ravage or be parasitic to energy consumption. And so what does that look like? I don't know yet. I would like to create this inside heart-centered consensus where we're all coming together to create the world we want to create. But to go back to your point is, I think we had an old dogma or an old belief system that the more light we shine, the more darkness would come.
Yeah.
Well, maybe because, right, we're willing to expose our giftedness, our true nature, and we're willing to, as you said in so many interviews, we're bringing it to the surface. And when we bring it to the surface, our shadow stuff comes up right with it.
Yeah.
It just maybe even just as brightly as the bright light that we sometimes the dark shows up pretty brightly too, in its own darkness and its own unfavorableness. And so in that opportunity, though, what if even children with tremendous amount of strength and courage can actually work with some of their dark sides as well? And what if we, as stewards and parents and teachers and other practitioners and helpers of children growing in the world, that when they do have an unfavorable thing or their own states of fear, their own spiritual journeys to take, what if they can take them even when they're two? What if they don't have to have orated languaging in order to resolve some spiritual discord?
Yeah.
And I think that's what you were mentioning in your big mountain of questions is, how do I get to that? Well, through following my own inner guidance as well. And I don't mean my own because I'm not separate from anyone. So it's our inner guidance that I tap into as well. And so in that, for example, this morning I said, how will I share the gifts and the understanding about the children in such a way where this darkness doesn't get attracted to them, because I recognize that I've been so focused on healing victim consciousness and fear consciousness and challenges that we all face as adults, so that we can rise and be those better stewards for the children in this time of massive planetary and humanitarian change.
Yeah.
And it is so exciting. So I literally went into that journey space and saw the children arise, open their hearts. They didn't open up their chakras, they opened up their star energy, the central core sun that we all are.
Yeah.
We are literally walking creational energy. And when we release the absence of fear, then that creational energy just starts emanating naturally. We don't have to make it happen. And in that, the children began to show me and waking up their star energy inside, their creational energy. And then what happened was they started touching, like you said, and you used the words grids. They started touching the grids. They were hexagonal hive grids. And I recognized early on that we were to not dismantle the grids. I asked how many grids are today that are really prominent, that are preventing people from being their true nature selves. And I got, there's about 20 of them. And I'm sure there's hundreds, if not thousands, maybe more, but 20 main ones. And so the kids were opening themselves up with their true energy, taking their hands and touching the grid with the golden energy, the energy of non-separation, the energy of pure love manifest in form. And inside that, their light, their presence literally diminished and zero pointed those grids.
Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah, I get where you're going with it. And I think of three things. One, first of all, you make a great point about, because it's not just reflective in regard to the children, it's reflective in regard to all of us. This process that we've all had to go through and are still going through, but I mean, we've done yeoman's work. And I think it's time, one of the things that's would benefit us is to start to take a real stock of what we've achieved, just as we took stock in what we didn't know was running, programs that we didn't know were running within ourselves, shadows and zero point and all that stuff. So what I'm saying is that, you know, if you take, for instance, the example you gave with the proposition that's starting to come to the surface about vaccines, or you can't travel, or vaccines, or you can't do this or that. And then also teleportation. Now, to some people, they might go, well, teleportation, I mean, that's like, you know, not even real, whatever, but it's as real as we make it. And yes, maybe it's time, to your point, this kind of covers the children thing too, is maybe it's time to start spending time on what our capabilities, our potentials are. You know, whether you can look at it another way, you know, can I start to look at my creativity versus spending all my time in the shadows over here trying to figure out what I'm not, and instead start figuring out what I am and what I can be. And so, you know, in the case of the vaccines versus teleportation, what if we put, you know, the majority of our focus on teleportation and de-emphasized and reduced the amount of focus on the vaccines? What do you think would happen? This is a quantum environment.
Exactly. So and not only that, what would happen if we don't focus on the need to travel? What if we can already travel from within, right? So like I shared early on, I travel to the ocean. I surf at Sandy Beach a lot, even when I'm not physically there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's real. I mean, yes, that imagination, I used to use years ago, in my 20s, when I had a couple of Kundalini experiences that scared the heck out of me. I was probably 25. I used to use a meditation. And on that meditation, I would go through a little run of trees and then walk out onto a beach. And then I'd go to this one spot and I'd sit there and things would happen. But my point is that that imaginary, by 3D definition, that imaginary process is just as real as this reality, or what we think is reality in the physical realm, and or the lucid dreams and dream state recall that we have. And so it's powerful. And so, you know, the placebo effect. I mean, it's really based on what we believe. That's why people have been able to do the things that they can do on small scale and a large scale. But the other thing I wanted to make sure that we brought back up in regard to what you said is this fear of not coming out or not publicizing or expanding awareness of attributes of the soul, be they these incredible frequencies that are far beyond us that these children are bringing to the earth, or anything else. Uh, I look at this, I'll give you an analogy. I was at a friend's house a couple of years ago. I was cleaning out the basement. It was a huge basement. It hadn't been cleaned in years. There was all kinds of stuff being stored there. And I just basically reorganized it, threw some stuff out. I knew because of my sensitivities that there had been some traumatic things, even involving children, and I don't need to get into details because I think people can put that together, that had gone on in this basement. I felt the energy. I saw it, in the field. So there was also a small community of rats and a small community of flies. And so I had to deal with this on an etheric and a physical level. I started to communicate with the rats. I started communicating with the with the flies. And long story short, I got everything organized. I swept it out. I bleached the floor. The rats left and the flies left. And at the very end, there was one little crook, like about 6 feet wide, about 5 feet deep. And I moved some big thing out of there. And behind that was a fearful dark spirit. That's all I can put it. And it's so appropriate to what you said, because here you can imagine the whole thing being perception-wise a dark space, being cleaned out. I removed this, I don't know what it was, like a big dresser or something. I moved it out of the way, and there I saw this dark entity that I knew, or say 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 2 months before this had occurred, was a much bigger presence. And when I saw him, because it was a masculine energy, I saw him standing there. He looked like he was shrinking.
Wow.
And what you said earlier about it's just fear, and shining the light does exactly what happened to that in that exchange to the darkness. It made it smaller and smaller, because what happens if you have more light? Well, you're going to have less of whatever the opposite is. And so in that case, which is a metaphor as well, I just said, what do I do? And they said, open your heart and offer your, and that's what happened. But you saying this brings that back, and I'm not telling it because it's a story about me. I'm telling it because it's a perfect metaphor for what you were saying and what you opened up with. Don't be afraid. Illuminate, expand, right. Grow, because what's it going to do? Yeah, it's going to bring the shift up, but
yes,
it's going to be smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's both on an individual level and a collective level.
Sure it is. And when it gets smaller and smaller, it's interesting in the growth process, because then you start to realize how unseparated we really are. Yeah. And then you go through waves of experiences where you experience other people's dark stuff too, because you become not separate from their pain and suffering. And in that form of non-separation, then you experience that, and you learn to zero point that experience as well. I call it energetic relating or conscious relating. We become conscious with how we're relating with one another in regards to our own individuated experience, and then in our collective experience, whether that's one-on-one or one-on group or group-on-group. And then we start to create a ripple effect across the quantum field that impacts our thoughts, emotions, and actions in the physical world. And then we start to come together, and we never knew that we could. People start speaking differently. People start thinking differently. And it isn't the sense of mind control or other ways. It's actually inside heart-centered consensus. Yeah. So that fear entity in the corner of the room such a beautiful illustration about how you set the space because your presence there matters.
Yeah.
You chose to shine your light and clean it up, like physically, mentally, emotionally, metaphorically, and spiritually, right? All of those ways. And as you were cleaning it up, you witnessed the thought form. My colleague and I, Annie Kalakar, we're creating a book called Leap of Consciousness. And inside of that, we've done a lot of R&D, or research and development, in the spiritual realm. And in that idea, we found that every dark entity, I don't care how evil it is or whatever, it is literally a thought form. Now, whether it's digitized and AI, made, or whether, a false father God did it, or whatever, whoever was the great one that created this thought form, and it can be us humans.
Yeah.
And so, and it can be us when we leave the body. When we're in the body, it's amazing the way we can create thought forms, but they can actually live in spaces. And right, like they live in spaces in our body. We're beginning to recognize that when we have a physical symptom or a problem, we're looking to root cause. And a lot of times those root cause we're recognizing now are spiritual discords or emotional reactions, or thought patterns that don't serve us anymore, or belief patterns that really weren't the truth. And so what happens in that aspect is we start to diminish those fear states, and those thought forms begin to shrink, like you physically, visually got to witness, or feel from a feeling standpoint, you got to witness that shrinking. And then when it got to that level where you felt it was more manageable, you connected with your inner guidance, which we all do. It's so beautiful, right? And we learn to filter out, right, those survival needs or those ego needs, and then we're hearing it more in more pure form.
Yeah.
And then you heard it to illuminate, to recognize that thought form was absent of some love.
Exactly. Exactly. And I got another kind of an analogy too, that, and this is so, what I love too about our experience is that everything is becoming more cohesive. The synchronicities have turned into a consistent transition, like reading a book. So they all fit together. So you'd be talking to someone like this and think, oh, I remember this from 3 days ago. I was talking to my other friend, and we were basically talking again. It can be looked at on an individual level, on a collective level, but it's still based on the intention that we all have, which is to see transformation and change. And so I was talking to her, and I said, it's kind of like this. We've been sitting here going, let me negotiate with the universe my terms. Like, I will open this door and step into that space that you're pushing me to, which I'm, by, full admission, fearful of, because it's unknown. And okay, wait a minute. When they fix this, or the government does that, or enough people wake up, or whatever the terms and conditions are, we then say, then we'll participate. Then we'll enter the arena. Where the reality is, and I think this is taking hold now because of people like you and movements that we associate with and that we collaborate with and so on. But I think what's happening now is we're saying, wait a minute, we are transformers. So why do we need to waste our time setting up these absolutes and these terms and conditions with the universe, however that's represented to us, when we can walk into that space and turn on our superpowers of transformation based on imagination and intuition and creativity and love. And that's kind of like owning it in my book and being what we are.
Well, you're right. I mean, I view the universe rather simply. I view it as like three main aspects that create life and form. And one is omniscience. That means all knowing. So
Yeah.
all knowing is able to be accessed by all of us. I think we've just learned somehow to be suppressed, or we learned helplessness, or we learned these different things that we said we can't access. Maybe some forms of religious indoctrination, other forms are governmental systems and structures, family systems, all sorts of things that has created us to not access infinite knowledge.
Ego systems too. Don't forget those.
Right. And so there's that aspect that we can access all knowing.
Yeah.
And of course that comes with responsibility. Of course that comes with interpersonal responsibility. Of course that comes from, quite possibly, I choose to only access infinite knowledge in the realm of love, not in the realm of fear. So if I'm in lack consciousness, I know I need to remove the lack consciousness from my being so that I can stand in a concept maybe called pronoia. That means the world is conspiring to support me, or I could be in service to myself and all others. And so that we all matter. I don't know, all these different constructs we can stand inside to then access it. And I want to access it from either the 0 point, which there's no judgments whatsoever, good or bad, or the empowered state of the love that I am manifest in a human body, for example. And then the other two aspects are omni love, a love that flows through everything. Everything has love, even when it's fearful, evil, heinous, whatever it is. It still has love in it. It just forgot it. That's all. And so we get to support that and help that wake up and remember whatever that thought form is. Even inside plants and animals and the ocean and everything else, and the earth and the universe. And then the third part is omnipresence, right? And all presence is here. The now moment is here. So if we take a look at, like, here's a camera. If we take a look at the universe as like an egg, and it's the now moment. And yet we've created such levels of constructs in lower dimensions of awareness called time constructs. In the now moment, we have the past, present, and future all in the now moment. Now, that's a completely multi-dimensional way of looking at time, how to utilize time, construct time, and work with others. And so I use those variables, or utilize those variables, to create the world I'd like to create. And when I do that, I don't do it from a self-manifested form. I do it from a unified form inside oneness. So what does that oneness mean? Without forcing anyone else to be the oneness that I want to be.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing, too, that I think we're moving into, where, like you were saying about the systems, that's so profound, because simple, but profound, because that's what they are. They're basically deterrents, obstacles. And what are they? They're like that fear, the definition of a fear of an entity or an energy that's dark is simply, it's a thought. So regardless of how much bricks and mortar something has in the physical, the governmental system, the medical system, the legal system, the ego system, and because that's a big one. And even in the light worker community, I think it's even bigger, because we're working it out on the forefront.
We have egos on higher dimensions too. I think that was a rude awakening for a lot of spiritual journeyers. Was that we thought that the higher realms was all clean and light, and when you venture there, when, I don't know, you're a remote viewer, you can expand your awareness, you bilocate, you teleport, whatever it is you do in and out of the body, you begin to recognize in these other dimensions, in these other morphogenic fields of reality, there exists ego there too. And
that's true.
I think that's why we've been working through in 2020 so much spiritual warfare and starseed warfare, and the Octarians are better than the Pleiadians and all this sort of stuff.
And I'm this and you're not.
Right. I called it on Oahu, the have and the have-nots, and we needed to recognize that we needed to let go of that, because all that is victim, victimizer.
And everybody's been a player in that game. Okay. And regardless of your station in life, by your perception or someone else's, and going back to what you said, because it's very important to me on a personal level. You bring up a lot of good stuff, and that is, so one of the things I see playing out is what you're talking about, the haves, have-nots mentality, frequency, program, whatever you want to call it. So these systems stand in the way. So we're starting to remove these systems, and the universal energy is assisting that, because that universal energy is predicated on our own use or expansion of it. And one of those is the ego. system, which is really, and I remember 9 years ago when they gave me my first downloads, it was like the ego is the universal equalizer. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Well, without the ego, like the whetstone for a knife, it won't get sharper. And so if I look at that, I've seen a lot of that, which you just talked about, the starseed and lightworker circles. It's actually a healthy thing because you see it happening, meaning it's coming up to be seen and then integrated or released, or equilibrium comes into play. But that is not an easy thing, because this is an internal thing that we have going on, that if we try to tell somebody who we are, we don't even see the blind spot that we have that's behind, why am I telling them this, right? Or why am I saying this? Or why am I a have or a have not? And so what I'm getting to is, I think where we're getting, because of this omnipresence, because of the other things that you're talking about, is activity. Being active with an aligned intention from the heart. Okay, being active, that removes it removes the obstacles, to me, in a quantum way. Not where I got to go, okay, this one's here, let me work on that, this one's here. No, let me blow through this with my pure illumination and my service to self, to my brothers and sisters, and to the collective. Let me just do my thing. And I think the universal energy is supporting that. And I think that in itself is another metaphor for what we described earlier, where you're blasting more light. And what happens? Because there's more light in proportion to the whole, what was opposite of it becomes dark, becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. I want to say too, what you said about the ego presence in other dimensions. I have to tell you, I can absolutely, at least from my opinion and my experience, validate that. And I just had a recent one 2 weeks ago, where they came in and they said, a continuation of some downloads I'd gotten a few years earlier, let me show you how the galaxy was created. And they showed me specifics, like the primary species that was the major architect, and then this layer, and then that layer. But as I'm going
We're working on helping them be spiritual sovereign too.
Exactly. That's where I'm going with this. And that's what the message was. The message was, so I said, oh yeah, I've seen this in the fourth dimension, the astral, and so, but up here, you still have possession, you still have hierarchy. So, and then they're like, yeah,
sequestering and recycling. There's all kinds of funny game.
And it may be at a higher dimension, but it's still there, proportionate and relevant to that particular time and space. But my point was, they said to me, look, you guys have been carrying the plan, carrying the objective and they were just showing me the galaxy, and so it was in that container, but that you guys have been carrying this forward generation after generation after generation. So no matter what it looks like, that's an infinite stream of expansion coming direct from the central sun or direct from source. And you guys are starting to walk into a space now where you're starting to realize it. You don't even have to go tell anybody, Todd, is, in what you're doing in your work, because you just need to know that people are stepping into this awareness. So final point is, they were telling me, how do you grow this? What can you do? What can anyone do? Step into it, actualize it, activity, like I was describing earlier. And they showed me how it was like a wake in a boat, when a boat's going through the lake, and it just got bigger and bigger behind, the individual expression of oneness.
The individual expression of oneness, that deserves repeating.
Well, Morgan Lee, you know her?
Yes.
She told me a long time ago that the road to oneness is through individuality. And I'm like, what does that mean? But I get it, because if I'm serving myself, others, and the collective equally with a thought, word, or action, that's it. That's the individual expression of oneness. Now, because we're in a physical realm that those other dimensions we were referring to aren't, there's more contrast, there's more polarity, and the womb of Mother Creation through our efforts is bigger and has a bigger field of potential.
It sure does. And speaking of that field of potential, now what does that look like inside these constructs of the as you believe universe, as it's omniscient, meaning all knowing. So we have access to all knowing that we could ever want in any dimension. It's even fun accessing it from the third, right? Because that's how we can make physical systems and structures. And now overlaying that, though, what consciousness can we overlay inside our systems and structures that have higher consciousness, that have a higher awareness and understanding? And we can use each dimension of awareness for building blocks of a life we truly choose to create inside that unified field, so that we're not separate from these different dimensions, and that we get to walk through all of them with mastery and understanding. Oh, okay. I'm choosing to be my avatar self in the 11th dimension. So I'd like to create, I don't know, the glass of water that I'm about to drink for my physical body, my physical, maybe 3D, 4D, it's probably 5 or 6D now, in that essence. And then what would fulfill it, what would support it, what would help it emanate and bring more light to myself in the world, right? There's all different ways in which we can construct our world now by understanding that we have advanced physical atomic structures that even, I was learning from Yogananda's guru, who was assigned to me from Yogananda at his shrine. And he said, he will be teaching you, Sri Yorkshire, will be teaching you 6th to 12th dimension physics. And I said, that's awesome. I've been wanting to learn that because I recognize calculus goes out the window in 5 and 6D. And so then what is the value of having these other forms of mathematics? Well, they'll create different energy forms. Well, they'll facilitate teleportation. I love the one interview you had, I think it was with you, the woman who said, in the future, we'll be in houses that'll be more congruent with nature.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll be teleporting all over the place because we won't need energy that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll still have fun ATV vehicles, right? Or something like that,
Right.
cruising around. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, that's what I see as a very near future for us all, that we have that opportunity. And when we stop such massive energy consumption and being parasitic to the planet and energy, then, and we learn to utilize it in a reciprocating format where we give and receive, we utilize, and then once we utilize something, we're aware that how will we give it back to that which we utilized from, those kinds of concepts, then all of a sudden energy doesn't become an issue, and it doesn't become a lack or we don't have enough.
Yeah, we're that hidden free technology.
Yes,
That's
we
what we're.
are.
And another great point that you make that I think that is starting to sink in as we've watched the chaos and the projection and polarities, particularly in our light worker circles, star seeds, and that's not I'm not throwing light on, making light of that, because it's obviously a characteristic of our transformation. If we didn't see it, it'd still be hiding in the blind spot. But the thing is, I forgot what I was going to say. It's been a long day, but it was something you just said. Okay, I got it. I think we've spent enough time up there, over there, down there, everywhere but here. Now, that doesn't mean that to your point, that we can't go jump into the 11th dimension and play with the resources available, the alchemic material available to us. The point is, that place is there, we're here. Our gift is to be able to bring that stuff here. We don't need to go anywhere. This is the place where it happens. The imbalances, to whatever degree they are in these dimensions that you talked about, they're rooting for us. Yeah. We're down here. We're like the Marines. We're the grunts. We are the mutts. We're the universal mutts. We're made up of all of them, and we have all of this to access, and we're figuring it out. And so now,
what if we're not the bottom feeders? What if we're not the bottom feeders? What if we're the most courageous beings in the universe
simultaneously?
That's that decided to descend or participate in whatever dissension process this is, to experience more compressed environments, so to speak.
Yes. Yes.
And in this compression, right? So when we compress, we re-evolve, right? We re-evaluate. We take a moment to go inward and to have those moments of introspection to expand again. And so what I recognized, I mean, I asked in December 21st, 2012, I was at the beach here in San Diego, and I said, when can we unify all the dimensions that I see, I walk through, I understand, I know to the degree that I know. I don't know everything because it's kind of fun not to know everything. And so then in that part, because then you can access infinite knowledge and you can have fun with it. But anyway, I said, when can we do that? And I got very clearly from the very source creator, non-judgmental source creator, they're not ready yet. And I'm like, they're not ready yet. What does that mean? And then I got a few minutes later, well, you're not ready. And I'm like, cool, I'm not ready. I can work with that. And so I didn't realize that I was saying that to myself because I was still very individuated. I was not in oneness yet. And part of unifying the field is becoming one. So I took on this journey of waking up to about 11 years ago, and then really significantly about 9 years ago in 2011. And then by 2012, I was ready to unify the field. And yet I didn't know what that meant. So I said, okay, I open to understanding what that means for me individually and then collectively. And so then I went on this super wild journey, as you talked about, like traveling everywhere and doing everything. It was to understand I needed to bring in all my past lives, all of them, every single one. Even, I don't really remember being a rock, but I bring in that too, being the ocean, being all these other beings, including all these other human beings. And when I brought all that in, it did create a little bit of, I don't know, brain and nervous system disorientation. I didn't really understand how to orient all that because of the genres and the systems and structures here on planet Earth and what we learned is true or not true. And so upon those levels of integration, what I recognized is when I came to peace with all those other parts of me, no matter what consciousness challenges I resembled and honored and recognized and fear states of being. But I've cleared all these other lives of these fear states of being. And then I asked humbly, which lifetimes shall I centrally locate in the now moment? And it said this one. And I said, okay, this one, not all the other ones, years ago or years in the future or years anywhere else, this one. And I said, okay. And so I started introducing those other lives to this life. Yeah. And I started introducing this life to those lives. Yeah. And so we became one. And when I started to do that, it started to bring me on another level where I could understand I could be one with others. And I could be one, even though I knew that was possible through the quantum field, I didn't really understand it at the depth because I needed to commit to the oneness and not be separated from pain and suffering, not be separated from cooties called viruses and other things, not be separate from, somebody's ill or bad behavior. And what I recognize in that zero pointing is the relaxation and the remembering and understanding that judgments promoted and perpetuated that separation.
Yeah. Judgment is the origination point of those thoughts that create what you referred to earlier.
True. Sure.
Ashley Lee, phenomenal conduit. And this is what it's all about. This where two or more gather, whether you're one of the two on the screen or on the live on the replay. This is the same concept, but we're coming from the other direction now as conscious creators. So we move into these energies, these fields, these vortexes and portals and laboratories of creativity, the womb of Mother Goddess, man. And don't underestimate that. But you can't now anyway, because the faucet's been turned on full blast and there's no way to turn it off. But this is the quantum field. And this exercise, this merging of all of these multiple frequencies. And not only are they multiple souls, but each one of them has a tremendous, virtually infinite multiplicity within themselves. So think about what you just said, throw it into the context of 97 people plus me and you, and then the people that watch it on replay. And this is just one example in the minuscule one drop in the ocean in the whole world, right? But it isn't even the whole world. This
Right.
is not a 3D thing, and I don't mean 3D as in dimension. I'm talking about in shape. I'm talking about in what the expanse is in a multidimensional respect. We're like the cosmic nuclear bomb that's building and brewing and is really not about to explode, but exploding outward. We are the Big Bang. We are
We are.
creating new universes in a multiple level, and we don't need to understand. And that's what's so great about that last transmission that you were conveying, is the final answer is you just got to commit. And back to what I was saying earlier, and I'm not saying this is the way to go. What I'm saying is it's working for me right now, which is I'm starting to understand. Just stay active. Just stay active. Just keep going, and that is commitment, right? And just keep going, keep growing, keep being open, because the more open we are, the more raw material we have for our creation.
When
And
I love your word active too. I mean, that's a great discernment from the word doing.
yeah, yeah,
And being active, it invites in a greater meaning or a broader meaning of that I'm conscious, I'm
yeah,
aware. I recognize how I'd like to create that construct of doing or being or seeing or, you know, being, and I agree with you. I am guilty for being inactive for a lot of lifetimes, for a lot of processes that I didn't know, that, like you talked about earlier, that streaming that we're bringing through over over a long period of time. And I recognized I needed in this lifetime to wake up to
hmm,
being active in participating, and I didn't recognize it was challenging to be active in the absence of tools. And some of the tools were recognizing that a lot of these systems and structures were built out from fear.
yeah,
They were.
yeah. Duality.
And they were they were from conflict resolution in the old
Hmm.
style, which is problem solving inside fear.
Yeah,
Instead, what we're now moving to is problem solving inside love.
yeah,
So we're recognizing we're having the tools to be able to go, oh, okay, I have a bad emotion. Okay, that's awesome, because that bad emotion is waking me up to be active.
yeah,
But I don't have to live with that emotion. I created that emotion, or I'm feeling the emotion of someone else, but I can let all of that go. And then what I do is I choose to zero point out the problem, not to make it go away, but to be a better problem solver.
yeah,
And so when I zero that out with no judgments from any perspective, I then have super good clarity in the precipice of creation. I call it the God space, but it's the space of non-judgment. It's
yeah.
dark there. There's no light. You bring your
That's
creation of
right.
light to
That's
that
right.
environment.
That's exactly right. I love that.
And
That's
and
another
then
great one right there. That needs to be a meme, because like the first words of the Bible, let there be
right,
light. And I always say
right,
that on the show. I'll be like, okay, if the words are let there be light, what does that tell you? And I love what you say, because that's the same message you got in that transmission you were talking about when they said just make the commitment, it's you, whatever. But that's the reality of it. If you look at
right.
that and take it out of the context that it's a Bible or even a sacred text, but just imagine the origin, and imagine the words let there be light. And when you look down, it's and you're in that space and the light's emanating, and you look down and it's actually you. And here we go
Right,
with the active again.
right.
Because how did it start from there? It wasn't just let there be light, and then it's just like flat lines, like a EKG monitor. It's then you start moving around, active, and you start creating with every single thing you're doing, and it's multiplicity, And here we are pulling it all together, and I think we've done a great job. And I love collaborating with you. You are articulate, you are connected, you are down to earth, and there's a good synergy here. And I just want you to know that I really appreciate it, and endless gratitude, love, and respect, and honor and reverence, and all
Oh,
blessings to you and yours. I want you to say a little bit about where people can find you, or a lot. Now, I know you have a program on Awake TV. You mentioned a book that you're co-authoring. I know you've got a couple of other initiatives, and anything that you have coming up, but certainly please let us know where we can find you, and anything else that you find pertinent.
Well, my business partner and I, the one that we recreated a whole toolbox called Leap of Consciousness at leapofconsciousness.com, is to recognize and understand that we have consciousness challenges in the side of ourselves, which is a fear state of being. And we made a list of 1,600 so far consciousness challenges. So we're going to build a website app for that. But we have an email process where people can receive a whole library system of different consciousness challenges that they can access through a number system on their emails to understand. So when they're feeling comfortable, especially maybe around Thanksgiving dinner with family that you hadn't seen in a while, or maybe you do see, I don't know, and all of those things, you can say, okay, I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm having a consciousness challenge. I recognize this is unfavorable. What is it? Okay, well, it's conscious challenge number 36. Cool. So you can go to your email box and look that up, see a picture, see a meme, see a way of describing it, and then a way of reframing it. And literally when we reframe it through conflict resolution, which the main part is releasing judgments, what we do is we zero that conflict out to the point where we stand in the space of absolute neutrality, the 0 point, and then we can pick an empowered state of being, which we have a book of empowerment. And when you stand in that, then you augment the way you would like to be active. Mm-hmm. And from that augmentation, now you're, even when you have a distinct terrible problem, you can solve the problem not inside of anger, hate, disgust, vengeance, whatever it is. You can really resolve that problem from love, trust, courage, understanding, and going, yeah, those parts of that problem are really terrible. And at the same time, I'm not going to give any judgment to it because I'm not feeding it energy. I'm not feeding that fear energy anymore so that it can grow. It's going to diminish. I can continue to diminish it through being no competes. I am complete with this. I'm done. And I will sort it out. Even if it's rampant throughout humanity, I will be a part of solving the problem. Yeah. And I'm going to choose to do this inside love versus fear. And so our process helps people understand when they are in love or their fear. And then we can label it in such a way that isn't labeling it good or bad and continuing the righteousness. We want to release that as well. We all know that we're eternally divine and that we're here to wake that up inside of ourselves and each other. And so in that, we just created a nonprofit called Center for Conscious Awareness. And we literally are here to present this material called Leap of Consciousness to support influencers throughout the world to share in their own words, to heal victim consciousness, victimizer, fear consciousness within inside ourselves, themselves, and then they spread it out to their fan base, those that they influence. Yeah. And they learn to do it in their own languaging, so that it makes sense to those that are following them. And as we do that, we start to create a ripple effect across humanity that starts to change systems and structures absent of the victim consciousness that we constantly keep defending. And it's time to own it and to go, yeah. Yes, I was a victim.
Enough of the Stockholm syndrome.
Yes.
Right? I mean, like, you know, I love the analogy. So I picture the big bubble, which is really an infinite circle of love, right? An infinite field of potential.
Yes.
Which is really a copy of the light that we are in the Let There Be Light that I was talking about earlier. And inside of it, we have this little whetstone bubble of fear. And so the bubble within the bubble is where we're operating, right? And then suddenly somebody pokes through, right? And that's what I see happening. Like, we're moving into that bigger bubble, and we're not dissing the little bubble. We're not telling everybody hurry up and get out, because that is an accelerator. It's a catalyst. It's a generator. It's beautiful. You know, when you think about it.
It's absolutely beautiful. And so then sharing too, when you are here to support kids and really help them illuminate their light by living consciously, you can certainly reach them on centerforconsciouskids.com.
Center for or center of?
Centerforconsciouskids.com.
Center for
So I support that by listing people and practitioners from all around the world that are here to support children illuminating their light. And for those that have challenges in themselves to illuminate their light or the light of their children, I have a private practice called AshleyLeeHealing.com. And you can see me there to help.
AshleyLeeHealing.com.
Yeah, to help you and your family really move to that space of giftedness.
Right on. Far out, Ashley Lee. And when's your Awake TV? I know you
Our
can
new
watch.
series, I'll be entering series 5, which is called The Miracle Is You, and it will be airing on Christmas Day.
Far out. Well, I love you. Best to you and Marvin and your daughter and all your loved ones and all the work that you're doing and your collaborators and colleagues, Wake TV and your other collaborations. All blessings to you. And I look forward to many, 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 many more collaborations. And yeah.
Me as well. I so love you, and you are one of the most magnificent connectors on this planet. And I really, really do give enormous gratitude and gratefulness for your presence on the planet, and it matters hugely. And I honor that every day.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you. I'll see you later. Peace out.